Josh Tickell, you've made a few documentaries about oil, but Kiss the Ground is about soil, and how that can basically save the planet. So how did you go from oil to soil?
Well, in some sense, we wanted to find a more exciting topic. Rebecca, my wife, and I made these films together. After making these films on oil, we were actually looking for a more exciting topic. And our community, a number of our friends, people in the environmental movement, the climate movement said, look, you've got to do this movie on dirt. And after making 3 movies on oil, we thought, God, that's a real downgrade, from oil to dirt. But the numbers sort of played out and started to make sense in a big way. And when I say the numbers, I'm talking about the ability to sequester carbon dioxide and reverse climate change. That was the convincing factor. Once we started to see the data, we were like, okay, this is worthy of a film.
Mm-hmm. So when did you guys start working on it?
We started working on the film 7 years ago.
And at what point did you learn about regenerative agriculture, which is the process at the center of the film about how that can reverse climate change?
That was really up front and center. That was the beginning of the investigation, was this data set that Paul Hawken and other people, 100 scientists that were associated with the book Drawdown, as well as the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, and the UN, all of these people were crunching these huge data sets. And the bottom line was, look, there's no hope to really do anything significant with climate change unless we can sequester the carbon. At the same time, there was this new data set emerging, which was, yeah, we can sequester all of it, but we have to put it in the soil. And there is a method, it's called regenerative agriculture. So that was the hook that sort of got us involved in the film.
So that was there from the beginning, because one thing I like about it is it's not your usual doom and gloom type of film. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but those typically just present what's wrong and what the problem is. But you guys knew there was a solution to this from the beginning.
We knew that the numbers showed that there was a solution. But showing that in a sort of narrative way, showing characters, showing something that people can actually engage with. The science is not necessarily a good film topic in and of itself. So that was always the challenge from day one until the very last final cut was, how do we make this what is a strictly scientific proposition? How do we make this come alive for people? And that was the challenge of making the movie.
So how did you start there? Because it's science and it's also dirt and microbes, things we can't see. So where did you begin with that?
Yeah, we sort of followed 2 different trajectories. One was we've got to characterize the film with real people, and so we looked for people that were both doing this and that were very relatable. And then the other perspective was we had to find an animatic world. A visual language that everyone could speak. Didn't matter if you were in 3rd grade or if you were a postdoc graduate, massively, educated person on this issue. We wanted to find a universal language where everybody could go, oh, okay, that's carbon. Yes, that's a microbe. And then to have those 2 intersect. So we're driven by characters. We're attracted to these characters who are doing this hard work. Donegal Markegard, this really, wonderful ranching woman and her family in Northern California. Gabe Brown, this kind of stout, strong rancher farmer in the Midwest. These are archetypal characters. And throughout the film, you can kind of find a character which you resonate with, depending on where you're at in the audience. But more than that, we wanted that through line to be the animations and the graphics and the visual world that really, those are the touchstone moments where people have the realizations like, oh my gosh, we could totally reverse climate change. Wow, that's a big deal. That was only possible through that visual sort of storytelling tapestry that we had to create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked how you guys animated carbon dioxide and so on. I was I wish I had that in high school in my chemistry class.
Well, I wish all people in the West, especially Americans, had that in high school. And to that end, Kiss the Ground's really breaking some new ground in terms of its educational release, which starts this month. It'll be available free to every school student in America, as well as parents, teachers, and community organizers. So there's an educational version of the film, because we realized, wow, this is, you know, the backbone of a whole new education around how we deal with planet, how we deal with climate, how we deal with refugees. Ultimately, you know, how are we going to live on this planet? So that's why we're making the film available starting this month.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned some of the characters in the film. There's a lot of people in it, and, you know, some well-known people too, some celebrities. So how did you go about finding the right people to feature?
Well, you know, this sort of farming world and this agricultural world is known unto itself. So, you know, people, oh, I'm looking for a rancher who's kind of Midwestern. Oh, you got to talk to Gabe Brown. And then that leads to the next conversation, which leads to the next person. These people all know each other to some degree, because they're all in this microcosm of a fight to bring forth a new way to make food for the world. You know, the industrial food system has been done for 60, 70 years. It's based on chemicals, it's based on genetic engineering, and it's failing. It's failing in the US, it's failing globally. And by 2050, it'll fail to provide food to 1 billion people. So the stakes of that juggernaut of 1 billion people, who will be a combination of climate refugees and food impoverished people, the stakes are huge. You know, there's no geopolitical or economic system that can deal with that. So what we're seeing, and I think it was so interesting to sort of see these big global issues playing out while we're making the film, is this climate issue is exacerbating all of the other issues that we're facing. But it's under the surface, and it's quiet, and it's big. And sometimes it feels very still. It feels like nothing's happening. But if you dig down and you go, well, you know, why are we in the middle of these refugee crises? Why is humanity so immune compromised in so much as our bodies and the health of the food that we're eating and the soil that gives the food the health? All of these things are interconnected with soil and ultimately climate. And so you got this little band of people who has a big realization, my God, you can grow twice as much food in the same acreage and rebuild soil and store carbon. So the characters knew one another. We had to get to know them. And from that, you know, the film sort of evolved.
Mm-hmm. What was the editing process like? Because there are so many moving parts to it.
It was brutal. There were probably somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 great versions of the movie, each of which we had to kill after doing multiple audience test screenings, because we would get very sophisticated people, very educated people who would come in and they'd say, I didn't understand anything that got said about carbon. And we would just go, okay, back to the drawing board. Or I didn't understand anything how does water move with carbon? So we were dealing with, you know, fundamental science concepts that should be like basic to every person. But we had to give people a PhD level education, as well as take them on a, you know, relatively enjoyable ride in under 90 minutes.
Jason Mraz, who's in the film, he wrote an original song for it, also called Kiss the Ground. How did that come about?
Jason is one of those wonderful individuals who gets inspired about something that speaks to his heart, and he just does it. I think we had already filmed him for the movie. He had never seen any of his segments, hadn't seen the film, you know, just really just the interaction over the course of a day. And then just out of the blue, hey guys, you know, got like a voice recording. I made this song, thought you might be interested. Maybe you can use it. And it's this, I mean, it's just totally heart-touching, gorgeous song. And it, you know, plays over the end of the credits. It's a beautiful song.
That's such a casual flex. Like, I just wrote this, check it out. If you want it.
3 billion views on YouTube. I just put this little thing together, you know. It's like, wow. Yeah.
So what have you observed the reaction to be like from people since the film's been out? Like, do you see people taking action? Yeah.
it is an unusual wave that the film has created, and by unusual I mean we get tons of texts and emails and direct messages of people who just take pictures of their compost in their backyard and they're like, "Kiss the ground made me do it," or hashtag Kiss the Ground movie or whatever. So there's that kind of social media movement that's happening around, activating around the concepts in the film. But then we get really interesting reports like Secretary Vilsack, who's the Secretary of Agriculture, now under Biden as well. He just watched the movie and was apparently very inspired by it. So we've got this incredible range of people some of whom have tremendous sway over the direction of our food and climate, and many of whom are just individuals who are excited to get going. We've been told, basically since An Inconvenient Truth, that there's very little we can do. Screw in a light bulb and sort of tell everybody the bad news. It's a very nihilistic view about the future, doesn't give you a lot of hope, doesn't give you a lot of pathways for action. And I think what we wanted to do with the film is we wanted to show characters that were in action, that people could relate to, and they can go, "Oh, I see what that person is doing. I can do that too." Ultimately, this is a numbers game. Sequestering carbon dioxide is about how much land we turn and how much land we change within the next 10 to 20 years. So it really is it's a game of critical mass as to whether or not we're going to win in the grand scheme of things. If you want to sort of lens this in the fight against climate change, it's going to depend on numbers.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, Josh, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Thank you. It's an honor.